Hey everyone, yes, before you ask about it, this is a new background. One of the many you'll probably see in the backgrounds of my video going forward for at least a little bit. We're moving around a little bit. But regardless of that, we're still in October talking about Halloween themed games. And today I got a little bit of a quick take about the game behind me. It's fairly simplistic, so I think we're just going to jump right into it. This is Stupid Deaths. Okay, so Stupid Deaths is a pretty easy game. This is your game board. You see that green guy down there? That's where you're starting. This red guy up here, that's where the Reaper's starting. You're trying to get from here to here by going around this way here. The only way that you can move is by voting on these. These are Stupid Death cards. It's kind of where the name comes from. On these cards is the name of the person, the lifespan, description of the death, and whether or not that death is true or false. So some of these true deaths that are on here, this one's a false one, but if you have a true death, you might have actually heard of it before, because some of them are kind of wonky and weird, so something you might have actually heard in passing. Now, the players vote whether they think the death is true or false. You can have 2 to 6 players playing in this, and all of the players that are not reading the card vote. So, if in the case of that death, it's false. So, if all your other players vote false, that means they got it right. That means all of the players move their little pieces one space. Now, say that all of the players vote true, and that was a false death. That means the Grim Reaper moves, and he moves one space based on for each player that got the death wrong. So if you're playing with a lot of players, Reaper can catch you pretty quick. Now, the only way that the reader can move is if all the other players voting vote wrong. So then the player would that read the card would move 2 spaces. Now, like I said, you're trying to escape the Reaper. If the Reaper catches you, you only have one choice, and that's to give him your extra life token. Everybody starts with 1. But if after the Reaper catching you, you give him your extra life token and you move 1 space ahead of him automatically, if he catches you again, then you're done. He eliminates each player that he catches that doesn't have an extra life token. Last player standing wins, or the first player to reach the end marker wins. So, like I said, it's a pretty simplistic game, so let's get into our pros and cons. Okay, so we're going to start with pros. The pros are simple, just like the game is simple. One thing I like about the game is that it's pretty fast. It goes by really quickly. You'll finish the game in probably 15 to 20 minutes. If you're playing with a small group, it might take a little bit longer if you're playing with a larger group, but not by much, because it kind of scales with it, because the Reaper catches you pretty quick if you're playing with a larger group. It's really easy to learn. You can explain it in a couple of minutes. The rule book is literally 1 page of rules. The rest back is an advertisement, so it doesn't even go back there. And that's like great for all ages. And you can play. It says it recommends 12 and up. I guess that's the description of the death. You could play with kids that are younger than that. So it's family friendly. You can play it with your older relatives that don't really play a lot of games. You can play it with your younger kid relatives, or like neighbor kids or something like that. Whoever you're playing games with, doesn't really matter. I like that the fact that the theme makes sense. You're talking about deaths, and of course you have like a Reaper, and then these are pretty cool. They're like coffin shaped. I like that for the voting cards. So that's kind of nifty. A little extra life token. I like that. Reaper's probably my favorite piece. I think it looks kind of cool, with a little skull and the thing. But And, you know, I guess you can consider it kind of educational. You're learning some historical deaths, or you're learning some fake historical deaths. But they have like ones for like Genghis Khan and like famous magicians and like historical figures. So it's kind of interesting. Like the one I was showing here was this one's false, but you know, it's talking about a Roman poet. So like even the true ones kind of go back a ways, which is kind of cool. Like I was playing with my son, and he's like a big history kid. He loves learning about history, and he actually had heard some of the deaths, so he kind of knew that they were true. Um, in terms of cons, I'm gonna go with a big one. I'm gonna start with components, and this really bothers me. Getting this, like I've played on this several times now with a couple different groups, and it just won't go flat. It bothers me that it won't go flat. So like it's sitting on the table, and it just kind of like wobbles back and forth. And I've tried laying stuff on it to make it go flat, and I just don't know what it is. But that really bothers me. So also from a component aspect, the I've talked about this before. We'll talk about it again. These little plastic standy things, I can't stand them. You see what it does to the Reaper, which is, like I said, the coolest piece in the game, and it messes them up there. So they always do that when you stick it like that. I'd rather have like a little figurine. I know, it's a cheaper game. Um, it's kind of a mass market game, so you're not really going to have figurines or anything like that. But I don't know, just give me. Some games have the little kickstand that you can pull out like that. It's sits right there. It folds flat. Give me that. I'd rather have that than the plastic standee. The cards aren't like they kind of have pointed edges, which means they're going to bump into things. They're going to get hit and they're going to get dulled, which is going to make them kind of, I don't know. Well, they won't be even anymore. They're also fairly thin, and they don't hold up well if they get wet or anything like that. They start to like kind of warp. These are fine. They're just like typical kind of like pawns from like a Sorry game or something like similar to like a Sorry game. Not quite meeples, but similar. So they're okay. They're also just kind of hollow plastic, as you can hear there. Beyond that, the the game is pretty like a simple game. So you're gonna get what you expect, and it's a fun enough game. So I think the pros and the lower price point on it kind of outweigh the cons. I would, in terms of a final thoughts kind of thing and a score, I would recommend it if you have like a family that doesn't play a lot of like heavy strategic games or intensive games. It's something that's gonna, you can play through it. Like we played through several games, and we didn't get through the whole deck of death cards. There's a lot of them in there, so you could play it for a while and still have a decent amount of replayability because you're probably not going to work your way through the deck. We just kind of use the ones that we use through the game and then kind of leave them in a separate pile, and so we can work our way down through. You're going to get a decent amount of plays out of it with one deck. So I would definitely give it a recommendation if you have like kids or not heavily strategic game players. And in terms of a score, for a casual gamer, like 6.5. I mean, I think that you're not going to get like a lot of laughter out of them because the stupid deaths theme kind of tells you that, or is trying to tell you that they're going to be like really funny, but most of them aren't particularly funny. Um, in larger groups, if you're playing with the 6 people, it's hard to escape the Reaper. In a smaller group, the Reaper's probably not going to catch you. We played the most amount of games with 3 people, and in 3 people, we played several games, and the Reaper never caught us. So that comes down to it's not moving fast enough. But when we played the 6-player games, the Reaper catches you pretty quick. So the games end fast because the Reaper will catch sometimes 2 people at a time, 3 people at a time, and those will end fast. So yeah, 6.5 for casual gamers, probably a 4.5 for somebody who actually plays a lot of games. But yeah, you can check the link down below. We'll have a link showing you how to get stupid deaths, and it's no extra cost to you, but it helps out the channel. Really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Never Enough Gaming. I'm Jeremy. See you in the next one.